Hello, my 5 subscribers, 3 of whom are just my friends who pity followed me. Today I'd like to talk to you about what it's like being a bottom-of-the-barrel YouTuber. Now, I haven't been doing YouTube for a very long time, so I'm hardly an expert, but I figured this is a good moment to make this video before I either miraculously gain an audience and stop being a bottom-of-the-barrel YouTuber, or alternatively quit because I realize that my videos will always be crap and no one will ever watch them. YouTube is humongous now, so there are several different tiers of YouTubers. There are obviously the huge ones with millions of followers, whom everybody knows. There are the mid-tier ones with several 100,000 subscribers who are able to make a living off YouTube, but who are not hugely famous. Then there are people with several thousand subscribers who probably don't make much money off YouTube, if any, but they still have a niche audience. And then there are people like me, who have no audience at all, and who are doing it just for fun. And some of us probably hope to someday become successful at this. Others just do it as a hobby because, it's sort of a creative outlet and maybe we just have no one else to talk to. And people who do it like this often aren't taken very seriously, which is fair enough, and occasionally mocked, which is rude, but also fair enough, because our videos tend to be kind of crap. I mean, sometimes they're quite good in terms of content, but don't look very good. Sometimes they're just overall pretty bad. But there are reasons to that, and today I'd like to talk about my experience of being a proper bottom-of-the-barrel YouTuber. And because I like lists, let's do it as a list. Some people start filming their videos on a pretty decent camera right away because they just happen to have one for reasons outside of YouTube or because they can afford to buy one. But a lot of people can't really afford to buy a camera for something that's basically just a hobby, so they film on whatever they have. Some people film on phones, some people film on webcams. I film on an old, borrowed, half-busted tablet. Obviously, the quality isn't very good, but that's not the only problem. There's not a lot of space on it because it's not mine and I can't delete anything from it. So every time I mess up, I can't just keep going and then edit it. I have to stop, delete that video, and then start over because otherwise I'll just run out of space. It tends to freeze up at random moments, in which case the whole video just doesn't get saved. I can't really mount it very well because it's big and clunky and sort of not designed for filming, I guess. And I don't have any kind of tripod or whatever you would call a tripod for a tablet, if that even exists. So I often end up with these really unflattering angles where you can see all of my additional chins. It's sort of on the verge of dying because it's old and damaged, and the person who actually owns the tablet isn't a very careful person, so I'm sort of perpetually scared that any day now the tablet might die and then I'll have nothing to film on at all. But of course, the biggest problem is the quality of the video. Now, maybe 10 years ago, when everyone's videos looked like that, it would have been fine. But these days, YouTube is saturated with high-quality content, so no one really wants to watch something that looks like this. But there's not much I can do about that. I've looked into cameras. I don't have that much money. I can't even afford to buy a smartphone, so of course I can't really afford a camera. I realize that this lowers my chances of ever getting watched at all, but this is the best I can do, and this is the case for a lot of bottom-of-the-barrel YouTubers. Bad lighting, whether it's too much or too little, is another thing that's easily noticeable in a lot of low-tier YouTubers' videos. Obviously, if you're doing this as a hobby, or even if you have a few thousand subscribers but you're not actually making much money off YouTube, you might be unable or unwilling to purchase professional lighting. So you have to rely either on just whatever lighting you have or on natural lighting, aka the window, and that's not very reliable at all because sometimes it looks like this, and sometimes it looks like this. And sometimes it sort of circles through those modes within the scope of a few minutes. So in your video, it goes from I'm filming in the cave to suddenly there's a star going past my window. Now, I don't live alone, so I can't actually film whenever I feel like it. I have to schedule my filming around the other person, so I can't always film when there is natural lighting available, plus I'm nocturnal, so it's a lot more convenient for me to film at night. So I do actually use a light. I'll show you what I'm using. I'm using this. Something that irritates me probably more than the bad quality of video is the bad quality of sound. I'm all about the sound, and the sound on this is atrocious. There's a lot of noise, I have to stay quite close because otherwise it will be too quiet. I can only film in stationary mode because if I touch the tablet there will be a lot of noise that will be impossible to remove. I've looked into standalone microphones and I'm actually not even sure if they're sold here. I mean, presumably somewhere they have to be sold, but maybe in some kind of professional filming store that I'm unaware of. I looked at a bunch of websites of local electronic stores and they don't list any microphones at all, which means that in all probability I would have to order from abroad, and that would be ridiculously expensive, risky because stuff gets lost in the mail here a lot, and the shipping would probably cost more than the microphone. And even if I could do that, I'm not entirely sure if I'd be able to hook it up to this tablet because I don't have any kind of manual for this, so I'm not sure, but I think that the jack here is TRRS, whereas microphones tend to use the TRS mini jack, so it wouldn't be compatible, which means that I would have to buy an adapter, which is probably also not sold here, so that's another thing I'd have to order from elsewhere. It would be a lot of money, so it's not really an option, and that just pisses me off so much because I can watch something that has bad quality of video as long as the sound is good, but if the sound is bad, I don't care how good the picture is, I'll still hate it. So it really, really irritates me that the sound in my own videos is so crappy. Good editing is one of the major appeals of the high-tier YouTubers' videos. And that's not to say that you necessarily need it, or that you can't make a pretty good video in iMovie or whatever. I guess it depends largely on what kind of videos you make and what you want to do with them, but having a free editing program does limit your options. Getting a professional editing program would be quite expensive, especially if video making is something that you just do as a hobby. There are some pretty good free editing programs available. I'd say that the one I use is quite good, but the other day I spent like 3 hours trying to blend something in a video and I just couldn't because the mask that you needed for that is only available in the paid version, which is fair enough. And some people might say, well, you can get a pretty good editing program for like $50. Which is true, but for me, $50 is a lot of money. Even $20 is a lot of money for me. If you live in a country where the minimum wage is 90 cents per hour, you're probably not going to spend $50 on an editing program for something that doesn't actually bring any money in. So as much as I'd love to get a good editing program to enhance my video making experience, at this point it just wouldn't be a very wise decision. Big YouTubers have a tendency to know each other. Some of them have known each other for a long time just because they started out a long time ago and have known each other for years. But even that aside, they go to conventions where they can meet each other and they collaborate in order to expose each other's audiences to one another. There is a community, which is wonderful. But of course, if you're doing this as a hobby, or even if you hope to someday be a successful YouTuber, when you start out, you're pretty much just doing it for yourself. And maybe 10 years ago, when YouTube was starting out, it wasn't as much of an issue because everyone was small then. Everyone had just a few subscribers, and it was a community in and of itself. Whereas now, if you enter this party where there are people with millions of subscribers, and here you are with 5, it sort of feels like being a tiny sprout in a forest full of gigantic oaks, and trying to grow in their shadow can be a bit intimidating. And of course, everyone starts out with 0 subscribers, but there are just more opportunities for people who are successful at YouTube to meet each other, whereas for people who are really small, there really aren't that many possibilities to find one another, so it often feels like you're doing this in complete isolation. And I guess for some people it's not as big of a deal, but sometimes watching bigger YouTubers collaborate and support each other, but then returning to your little cave where you're just doing it on your own can be a bit discouraging. Gaining an audience can take time. Of course, some people become famous overnight, but that kind of fame is probably a bit unreliable, because if people are just paying attention to you right now because you did this one fascinating thing once, they might not stick around for the long haul. I mean, I guess unless you can sustain doing really fascinating things all the time. In most cases, it's probably better to continuously produce content that you can keep making consistently and gain an audience who wants to see it. And that, of course, can take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of motivation. And again, it probably wasn't quite the same at the start of YouTube, when everyone was sort of in the same boat, doing it for a relatively small audience as a hobby before monetization was even a thing. I don't want to say that it was easier. I wasn't there, so I don't really know. I only know from stories. But it was undoubtedly different because YouTube was a different website and a different community. Whereas now, there are so many more people on YouTube consuming the content that is being produced, so your potential audience is a lot larger. However, you are also starting out right next to people who already have millions of subscribers, who do it professionally, who have been doing it for years, who have much better resources than you do. And that's just kind of how it is. It just so happened that you arrived on this website when it's already this huge thing, populated by really successful and experienced creators. And the only thing you can do is just keep producing content to the best of your abilities and hoping that eventually you will get an audience as well. And of course, you shouldn't compare yourself to those giants, but let's face it, you're probably going to. And of course, producing videos, or doing anything really, when there is some sort of reward, whether it's being actually paid for it or doing it for an audience that wants to see it, is not quite the same as doing it for a potential audience that may or may not come. And of course, I'm not implying that professional YouTubers only do it for the money, but it is one of the motivations they have that small YouTubers don't have. And of course, everyone's motivation for doing YouTube is different. Some people just do it for their friends and family. They might not even care if they have an audience. Some people just have something to say. They want to express themselves, that's why they make videos. But even so, if you have something to say, then you probably want it heard, because otherwise there would be no point in posting the videos. So for anyone who actually wants to gain an audience, it can take a special kind of motivation to keep making videos even as you consistently get 7 views. Because after a while, it can sort of start to feel a bit pointless, because, you're not being paid for it and no one is watching, so why are you even doing it? And certainly, for a lot of bottom-of-the-barrel YouTubers, the main reason that we do it is just that we like to. We enjoy making videos. And sure, some of us might want to become successful and maybe even do it professionally, but that is in no way a guarantee. So the core motivation is just the enjoyment of making videos. However, when that's your only motivation and your only reward, after a while, making videos, spending time and effort, maybe even money, doing the best that you can, and yet not having your videos seen by pretty much anyone can eventually get that motivation to drain. And another thing is, sometimes I don't even really want to make the videos that I want to make because I know that they won't be very good and no one will see them. I have a notebook full of ideas for videos that I want to make, and some of them I'll probably never make because I'm too scared of the potential backlash should they actually be seen by people. And others I'm apprehensive about making because I think that it's a good idea that might actually even be helpful to someone, but if I make this video, it will be in terrible quality and no one will see it, so I won't do this idea justice. That's one of the main reasons why I keep making these relatively pointless videos about nothing instead of making videos that I actually want to make that might actually have some worth, because I feel like those videos should be made by someone with good resources and an actual audience, because if I make them, I'll just take a good idea and it'll go to waste. And then there's also the fact that someone who's already successful obviously has a lot more exposure. If you already have an audience, your videos will be seen and liked and shared and commented on by a whole bunch of people. Whereas for a small YouTuber, the possibility that their videos will even be discovered by a potential audience is a lot lower. So people who already have a lot of followers will gain more subscribers in a day than a new YouTuber will gain in months. Besides, people are just more likely to support someone who's already successful, because if someone already has several million followers, then that's a giant stamp of approval. Clearly, they're doing something right. They're probably worth following, whereas with a new YouTuber, you don't really know. You have to take a chance on them, and that's not necessarily something that everyone wants to do. And then there's also the fact that professional YouTubers will, in all probability, keep providing you with content, while a small YouTuber might keep making videos, or they might quit tomorrow. Plus, professional YouTubers tend to have a certain style. Now, they might change as they evolve and develop as a person, but it is quite likely that they will keep making videos in their chosen style. So you sort of know what it is that you're signing up for. Whereas small YouTubers tend to be a bit more in flux, still finding themselves and trying to figure out what it is that they want to do, if they even want to keep doing it at all. Plus, of course, professional YouTubers already have the resources to keep making videos in good quality, while a small YouTuber might improve the quality of their videos over time, or they might keep making them in this kind of quality. So of course, most people are more likely to subscribe to someone who's already successful than they are to someone who's just starting out. So I guess, in conclusion, I'd like to say, support your local bottom-of-the-barrel YouTubers. They need it. Seriously. If you find a small YouTuber that you kind of like, maybe give them a thumbs up. Maybe comment. Maybe even subscribe if you think they might be worth it. Because if you don't, then there is a possibility that they will just lose all motivation and stop making videos. And perhaps no one will really notice, but maybe they could have been a great entertainer or a great spokesperson for important issues or whatever it is that they do. And now we'll be missing out on all the great content that they could have made. But then again, there's also a possibility that if they become successful, they do something horrible and become a terrible influence to a whole bunch of people. So maybe by not supporting them, you're actually doing the world a great favor. You never really know with these things. This tablet might be crap, but it does pick up on the sound of the garbage truck arriving at 5 in the morning.